Good morning, Quest. Let's go ahead and find our seats if we could. Guys, if you're in the house and you're ready to worship with us this morning, let's go ahead and stand together. This morning it is obviously super good to be back up here with you guys, and not up here that we haven't been with you so far, but to be able to worship God and to play some music and to fill the house is it's super special for us, and I hope that we are able to relax this morning and just be together and worship God. And it really is it's a privilege for us to get to worship God. There's a lot of countries in the world where you can't sing very loud in your church because you don't want to be heard and taken somewhere, or it's not free. It's not free to do that. We have ultimate freedom to worship God in this house whenever we want to. If you want to come on Tuesday night and sit here by yourself and worship God, it's open to you, right? And so we're going to sing a song this morning as we get going, and at the end, we're going to sing Great Is Thy Faithfulness, and it's something we've been talking about that Kevin spoke words to, and he'll kind of speak to you later as well. But the song called Yes, I Will is something we've sung on Joy FM for a while. But the chorus says, yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. It says, yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy. All my days, yes, I will. This is a commitment song, you guys. This is a song about saying, okay, I've got a heavy heart, but I'm going to sing to you, God. Okay, my circumstances, or okay, my talent, or okay, wherever I'm coming from. This is a yes song. It's saying, I'm here in your house and I'm ready to worship you. So this morning, we don't want to try to create anything that doesn't exist, but we want to go to God this morning and ask him to just fill our hearts as we worship and praise. Father, we come before you and we just lift our arms to you because we don't always have a lot of other options than to just let go and let you be who you are in our lives. And internally or out loud, if you would with me, just say yes. Yes, Lord. Yes, I will worship you when things are rough and tough. I will worship you in the lowest valleys. And as we'll sing in a bit, I choose to praise. That's a choice that we all have, and we're saying yes this morning, God, as we come before you. We want to sing loud enough that these windows rattle, but comes right from our hearts, God. And we just ask you to be with us this morning as we get started on whatever moving forward looks like and whatever small pieces might look like. And we thank you for that from the bottoms of our heart. And we just want to sing to you this morning, God, as we come to you. not in anything we can create or make or be or do, but God, we give you the glory this morning. We thank you for this time. We thank you for this family and for the praise that you've put on our lips and our lungs. In Jesus' name, amen. Go ahead and take a seat this morning.
Good morning, all you questers. It's time to listen up, because here's the skinny. We want to make sure everyone is heard and is aware of our big changes coming this October, 2 weeks from today to be exact. We're so excited to welcome our Quest kids back, kindergarten through 6th grades, starting Sunday, October 4th. We're still looking for a couple substitute teachers to serve periodically throughout the fall, so if you're willing to help, please contact Karen Robertson as soon as possible. With a big change like Quest Kids reopening, it's going to cause another large change. If Quest Kids is back in session and using the lower level, that means we can no longer use it for an overflow for main service. We have been needing that space on Sundays, so in order to be able to provide enough seats for everyone that wants to attend Quest on a Sunday morning, we're temporarily going to switch to a 2-service schedule starting October 4th. We'll offer 2 service times, 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. Quest Kids will only be offered during the 10:30 service. You can check out our blog post on our website for more information about this change. You may have noticed a flyer on your seat when you came in this morning. This is a list of all of our small groups that are happening this fall. There are varying times and leaders for our mid-sized groups that we call BLTs. These groups meet every other week and are open to anyone looking for a community group. We also have a couple Bible studies happening this fall as well. Kevin Hughes' Wednesday morning men's group has started a new study on the crazy cycle. It's not too late to join in with the group. It's a 5-week study that meets over Zoom at 6:30 every Wednesday morning. There's no need to sign up for this study. You can simply get the link on our event page on our website. We also have a more informal men's breakfast that happens at the Wolf Cafe in Baldwin every Friday morning at 7 a.m. This is a great opportunity for our fellas to get together and just have a relaxed breakfast. Ladies, Diane Hughes is leading a women's study on Tuesday nights at 6:30. It starts this Tuesday. They'll be working through a video study on Right Now Media called The Power to Change. There are 2 options for attending this study. You can attend in person, meeting on Diane's back deck at her home, or you can log in through Zoom. Simply email Diane for her home address or for the link to the Zoom meeting. You'll find her email on the small group flyer that you found on your seat this morning, or you can get it from the website. If you're watching this from home and you're not here at Quest, you can find all this information about BLTs and Bible studies on our website, and you'll find that at questchurchstl.org. Now, here I come to welcome you in person.
Yeah, there's really just no way of inviting myself up here. We've done it time and time again. I don't know where to go up here. How do you guys do this? I don't know. How is everybody? We good? Yay! All right, well, I'm Beth. Many of you might know me. Many of you might not. So just to give you a little thumbnail sketch about myself, I'm the Director of Communications here at Quest. So I handle the website, the graphic design, the marketing, you name it, I probably have a hand in it. So that's what I do here. I'm also wife to Luke, who is the worship leader. And we got 3 kids that we homeschool. I know everybody's homeschooling at this point, basically, but that's the one thing that didn't change for us in all this, because our schooling just stayed the same, and it was great. So, and I'm an artist on the side. So if any of that information is new, if you care, if you don't care, that's fine. But I just want everybody to take a minute and meet someone around you and maybe give them just a thumbnail sketch of who you are and what you're doing. I don't know. So let's do that.
Well, things continue to change, and it's just a unique journey through all of this. The past week I've been doing some reading, in fact quite a bit of reading, on just different people's perspective of the situation or the condition of the church in the midst of all this pandemic and social unrest. And I have found it to be very, very interesting. And in fact, I think I've become kind of convinced that when we kept waiting for things to go back to normal, that they're actually never going to go back to normal. There will be, everything's going to be different, at least at some level, and at some significant level, it'll never be the same again. And that even in the church, even with just the coronavirus, that there is a shifting going on, kind of a shuffling of the deck, if you will. People are going to end up, many will end up at a different place for a different reason in a different way. And in some ways that might be true for Quest too. And so it might look different, significantly different in a year, because I think this thing may last for a while, who knows? It could be over after the election is what a lot of people say, right? Or it could be over sometime after that. But in some ways it'll never be over. The Spanish flu lasted for almost a year and a half, if not more. And you kind of had to just dig in and deal, right? And that's kind of what we're trying to do, is dig in and deal. And so in figuring out what does the Lord want to do, but in the midst of it, we really do believe that people need hope. And because some of the despairingness is getting worse and worse and worse, because it's not exactly going away. People are struggling and need hope. And so we want to be people that have something to give to them. And the reality of a new life in Christ, that we begin to identify ourselves when we come to Christ, we identify with his death, and and especially in baptism, by his death and going under the water, and with his life and coming out of that. And so we've scheduled a baptism that had to be adjusted and changed and put off and just kind of swirled around. But just so you know, 2 weeks from today, so the same time that we go to 2 services, we're also going to do a baptism service. We have 3 that want to be baptized. And so if you'd like to be baptized, I encourage you, don't wait. Just go for it. Say, hey, I've never done that. And of obedience to Christ, of wanting to identify with him in his death and going under the water, and his life and coming out, I want to pronounce that and proclaim that to the world. And I'd encourage you to do it. We're going to do it right after second service. That feels weird. We've never said that before. We're going to do it right after second service. We're going to do it right out in front. We're going to set up a baptismal out there. And so if you come to first service that day, I'd encourage you just after the first service, go to your car, have a snack, maybe a nap, and then just come back for the baptismal, right? And but we'll do it right after second service, some baptisms out front. If you've never been baptized, I'd encourage you. Why don't you jump in? That's a bad term, maybe. But why don't you go ahead and take the dive? No, probably that's not a very good. But think about doing it, right? Okay. All right. Enough of that. I'm not a stand-up comic, and so. Hey, you guys, we started last week on a new series called Matthew, Kingdom Authority. And it is chapters 8 and 9 of this. It's after Jesus spoke the Sermon on the Mount, and at the end of that, people said they were blown away at what he said because he spoke with such incredible authority. And then Matthew's organized this book in a way that we could now see what does that look like. But this word authority, could we grab onto it just for a second? I don't know about you, but I think this word is a tough one. In fact, since Genesis chapter 3, this word authority has been a kind of a thorn in the side of every human being. Isn't it? You hear that word, and there's kind of a two-edged sword to it. On one level, you go, yeah. And on another level, you say, no, not interested. Here's the definition, and this may even make it more difficult. This is right out of the dictionary. It says authority is the power, the right, and the responsibility to give orders, make decisions, and enforce obedience. Now all of a sudden, we start pushing farther away from authority, don't we? You just feel it in you to push back. It's just something in us, right? We don't like authority. Really, at the end of the day, we kind of struggle with it, at least on one edge of this. In fact, here's some quotes. This is Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary was a professor at Harvard University. He's a clinical psychologist. He's identified a lot with the drug culture of the 60s and 70s, and kind of a free love movement, if you will. And he said this: think for yourself and question authority. Kind of came with the day, right? Or here's one by Dr. Dre, the hip hop artist, rapper. He also produces music, and he's got all sorts of things, owns his own record company. But he said this: he grew up in Compton, California, in a very, very run-down neighborhood. He said, I've always hated authority from an early age, and authority has always hated me. It's an interesting thought. He's lived out his life like that. Look it up. Watch what he's done and where he's at. He's expressed this with the way he's lived. Well, how about this one? Keith Richards, the co-founder of the Rolling Stones, he said, if you're going to kick authority in the teeth, you might as well use 2 feet. That's how he feels about authority, right? Or this one by Sherman Alexie. He's a Native American who is an author, a poet, a filmmaker, and comes from a really tough background. And he says, my only purpose is to teach children to rebel against authority figures. Wow. But you know what? Don't we all feel the edge of that sword? We do, don't we? Since Genesis chapter 3, people have responded that way to authority. And us too. There is another side to that same sword, and here's one by Haile Selassie, who's for almost 50 years was the emperor of Ethiopia. Really a man of incredible influence. And he saw the other side of that sword. He said, there is no power or authority without responsibility. And he who accepts the one cannot escape or evade the other. That's right. There is something good about authority, but there is a responsibility that comes with it. Or even this, C.S. Lewis, the famous Christian apologist, who was also always a professor at Oxford University in English literature. But he said this as he reflected on authority. He said, authority exercised with humility and obedience accepted with delight are the very lines along which our spirits live. He saw the good side of authority. How about this one? It's a proverb. Authority doesn't come from the loudest voice, but from the wisest. Right, that's right, isn't it? You know, there's a great book. I'd encourage each of you to pick it up. It's one of those foundational books called Changes That Heal by Dr. Henry Cloud. And in this book, he describes 4 building blocks of mature development in a human being, to be an adult. In the 4 of this, first of all, he says, one of the most important steps is bonding, learning how to connect to other people. It's a skill. It's something we have to learn with maturity, is how to connect with other people. The second skill, though, is boundaries. That means how to be separate from other people, how to know where you start and the other person stops, and the fact that you're not co-dependent on everybody. You are a separate person, and they're a separate person, and they can be a separate person. And that's one of the developmental things in being an adult. So bonding and boundaries. The third one is navigating a world that's both good and bad. Navigating a world that's both good and bad, right? That's an important element. The world there's nothing in it that's perfectly good and nothing that's perfectly bad. It's a mixture of good and bad. The only thing that's perfectly good with no bad is God himself. But we live in a world that's a mixed deal, and we have to figure that out. Now, everybody, I can tell you, I've seen this probably 1,000 times, where people will come to a church and they'll go, oh, wow, man, I love it. This is the perfect church. And I know for a fact, within several months, they'll be gone and never come back. Because they'll find out this church isn't a perfect church. And then they're like, oh, you guys stink. And we go from being perfectly good to being perfectly bad. And they're gone. Guess what? There's nothing in this world that's not both good and bad. You have to learn how to deal with a world that is that way. Now, the fourth thing is this. Adulthood, it means dealing with authority as a peer rather than being in an adolescent sort of one-up, one-down relationship. It's a really key experience in life. And these all reflect what God is like, right? God is a God who knows how to bond. God is a God who knows how to make boundaries. God is a God who understands the good-bad split in life because of the sinfulness of our world. But he also is a God who knows how to deal with authority, not only because he is authority, but because he puts authority in our lives and uses it. And so he wants us to learn how to be under authority, but as a peer. And a lot of times that doesn't happen very well in a church, to be honest with you. People don't deal with authority very well. They somehow feel like they're in a one-down relationship, and either they act childishly in that one-down relationship, or they get angry at feeling that way. And so they want to be one up on whoever the authority figure might be. And they become angry, and it just creates conflict. Learning how to deal with authority as a peer, as an equal, as an adult, recognizing that no one's perfectly good or bad. We need to have separation, but we need to have bonding, right? Here's what it really means, is learning how to submit to the authority of God by choice. It's really a powerful skill we have to learn, is how do we submit to his authority because I choose to, not because I have to. He gave us free will. And there is an impact of that. But to be able to respond to his authority and any other authority by choice. So that this issue of authority is a big deal. So in the next couple of months, the chapters we're going to look at, Matthew 8 and 9, are going to reveal the authority that Jesus possessed and that he demonstrated over disease and over death, over nature and over nations, and the authority he had over the demonic and over the disciples. And the question at the end of the day that you and I are going to have to wrestle with, and we're going to give ourselves a couple of months to do this, is we're going to have to wrestle with, does he have authority over you and over me? Does he have authority? And how will we respond to that authority? Will we tell him, over my dead body, there's no way I'm going to do it. I've always hated authority, and it's always hated me, like Dr. Dre. Question authority, like Timothy Leary. Or are we going to deal with it by saying the correct response brings life to our spirits? We'll see. But we're going to ask these particular questions. Now, today we're going to talk about the healing of the man with leprosy. Okay? So, the first thing I want to just say is we have to ask the question, theologically and historically, is this descriptive or prescriptive? In other words, does this simply describe what happened then, 2,000 years ago, or is it normative for today? Okay? So we read this event, we see what happened, and we say, is that just descriptive of then, or is it prescriptive for today? And there's really two questions that come from that. First is this: does God still perform miracles? And the second question is, does God heal everyone the same way? These are critical questions. And I think the answers are important for us to be able to deal with life. And I think the answer to the first one is yes, God still performs miracles. God is still God. He still does things outside of nature, outside of what is normal, the normal process of life. Sometimes he interrupts that and does miracles. Now, can I tell you I've ever seen a miracle many, many, many times, or this or that? I don't know for sure, to be honest with you. But I've seen God's hand work. And have there been things that are very hard to explain? Yes. But I know that he still does miracles. But does God heal everyone the same way? The answer is no. And so I think there is more descriptiveness to this passage than there is prescriptiveness to this passage, but there are some deeper things in this passage I think we need to understand and that we can grab onto and that we can take with us today that really matter. So we're going to go to Matthew chapter 8, verses 1 through 4. Now, you're going to see this, in a very unique way, that three things in this passage. Verse 2 is all about the act of worship. Verse 3 is all about an act of mercy. And verse 4 is going to be all about an act of redemption. We're going to see a lot in these very short verses, okay? So let's jump into the passage. Matthew 8, verses 1 through 4. It says, when he came down from the mountain, great crowds followed him. We're going to stop there right there. That probably belongs more with chapter 7 than it does with chapter 8, because he's just on the Sermon on the Mount. People are amazed by what has been said. He spoke with authority. What he said was incredible. And it says that when he came down from the mountain, the crowds followed him. They kept going with him. Now, you guys remember, Matthew is not written purposely to be a chronological order. And so when we get to verse 2, so we could draw a line, if you want to, right underneath that verse. That kind of is the end of the Sermon on the Mount. And then on verse 2, it's going to start, so we can kind of do away with verse 1 there, just for now, okay? Now, let's go to verse 2. It says, and behold. And what it means is, there was a time when. Doesn't mean it happened right after the Sermon on the Mount. It could have, but it's not necessary for it. He kind of bunches a bunch of activities together here in chapters 8 and 9. And so he says, and behold, at a particular time, at a unique time, a leper. And I just want to stop there for a second. Okay, let's just isolate a leper, okay? Because that's exactly what they did, is they isolated lepers. Let's underline it. And here's what it means. A leper is someone, obviously, with leprosy. Now, you guys, let me just give you a little bit of background, because it's really important to understand the significance of what was going on. We kind of read it, hey, a leper came to him, and this is what happened, and we move right on. But this is an incredibly powerful moment. This is an amazing event, and it has all sorts of dynamics that are running around inside of it. Okay, let's do this. So leprosy is this. It is a contagious disease that affects the skin, the mucous membranes, the nerves, causing discoloration and lumps on the skin, and in severe cases, disfigurement and deformities. Leprosy is now mainly confined to tropical Africa and Asia. This is a horrific disease. Okay? In New Testament times, it was a death sentence. You were considered dead. That's how horrific this was. You were separated and you were considered to be dead. Both the one with leprosy and anyone who came within 6 feet of them were considered ceremonially unclean. You had no right to come and be in the mix of worship. You were ceremonially unclean and you could not get out of it. And here's it. If the wind was blowing towards a person from the leper, they had to be 150 feet away. That's 45 meters. So if the wind was blowing this way and I was a leper, I had to be 150 feet away. I couldn't even be close to you. 6 feet of no wind, 150 feet if there was. You have no right to be close to me, is what would happen there. The only thing that was more defiling than contact with a leper was to have contact with a dead body. And that was horrific to a Jew. And do you get the feel how debilitating this was? Look at this. William Barclay, one of the commentators, said this. Leprosy might begin with a loss of all sensation in some part of the body. The nerve trunks are affected, the muscles waste away, tendons contract until the hands are like claws. There follows ulceration of the hands and feet. Then comes the progressive loss of fingers and toes until at the end a whole hand or a whole foot may drop off. The duration of that kind of leprosy is anything but from 20 to 30 years. It is a kind of terrible progressive death in which a person dies by inch by inch. There are reports that there will be rats who will eat these deformed extremities because the nerves are dead and the putrid smell would attract rats and they would eat them. It says here in the Middle Ages, if a man became a leper, the priest put on his clerical robe and his priestly crucifix and brought the leper into the church and read a burial service over him. For all human purposes, the man was dead. That's what it was like to be a leper. Now, you guys, to make this, I'm going to show you a few pictures. But frankly, these are very moderate pictures compared to what I could show you. But this one is by a gal named Fatima. She's an Indian woman. And you can see what it's done to her hand and to her face. And she's lived with leprosy for a long time. And she's still alive, but this has taken a toll over the years. Here's a picture of a guy named Aaron Reeve. He's a Norwegian immigrant to the United States. This was taken in 1886. There was an outbreak of leprosy in Minnesota. And this is what it did to his face. And there's a huge outbreak in Minnesota. So it's like it's been in the United States too. Or here's a picture of a young woman in India that's just contracted this. Leprosy is now exploding again in India. Every 4 minutes, a person in India is diagnosed with leprosy. You guys, I want to blow this picture up just for a second. Do you see the despair in her eyes? Can you imagine what this would feel like? You're going to be outcast. You don't get to be around other people. Your life in some ways is over. Do you see the despair in her eyes? I do. And I can't even imagine what she's going through. You guys, I think it's that same look in the eyes of this man who comes to Jesus. Okay? So let's go back to the leper. We see it a little bit differently now, don't we? It says, now behold, a leper came to him and knelt before him. You guys, let's just put it up here. This is going to be an act of worship. Here's a guy who feels so disenfranchised, so rejected, so put away, so put off. But somehow, we don't know for sure what he had heard or known about Jesus before this event. Maybe he was on the outskirts of the Sermon on the Mount and he heard it all. I don't know. It doesn't tell us. Maybe he had seen Jesus in action. Maybe he'd been told about Jesus. I don't know for sure. But all we know is this, is it says, and behold, this leper came to him. You guys, let's just stop right there. He came to Jesus. Guess what? You weren't supposed to come very close. You better not get very close. The wind better not be blowing. But you better, if you're going to come, you better not get closer than 6 feet. And you better tell everybody. You were supposed to be yelling to people, unclean, unclean, so people could get away. Can you imagine how rejecting, how painful that must be? Not only is their body in pain, but the rejection from community. And so he's yelling, unclean, unclean, and he comes, and it says that he comes to Jesus. He came to him. He humbled himself on all the things that would be said about him. And all the people who would say, oh, that's gross, get away. And they all moved away. And he came to Jesus. It's an act of worship. It's an act of humility. It says he came to him, and look at this, he knelt before Jesus. He probably felt so humiliated already. But in front of Jesus, he came to worship. And he knelt before Jesus. And he said this, Lord, if you will. What this really means is, Lord, I know you can. I know you have the ability. I know you have the authority. I know you. I've watched you. I've heard about you. You are different. I have no other place to go. I have no other hope. I have nothing going. I've been made dead by my own family. I've got nothing. I'm wasting away. He so badly wanted to be not just healed. Look at this. He says, Lord, if you will, and I know you have the ability, you can make me clean. Not just healed, you can make me clean. He had to announce to the whole world he's unclean. Because you can make me clean. He comes and he worships Christ. He didn't know if Jesus would say yes. He didn't know if he'd say no. But he said, I know who you are. And I know, Lord, if you will, you can make me clean. Now, you guys, did Jesus heal every person he ever saw that was sick? He didn't. Now, did he heal a bunch? Absolutely. But he didn't come just to heal. He came to establish his authority, to reveal his authority. Now, this gentleman, when he comes to Jesus, eventually this gentleman died. He didn't die of leprosy. He died of something else, but eventually he died. So the point wasn't, we're just going to come and heal everybody so that everybody gets to live forever on earth. But his point was that we get to live forever in his kingdom. But eventually this man does pass away from something else. And I don't even know, well, we won't get there. Lord, if you will, you can make me clean. He comes to worship Christ. No matter what you do, Jesus, I understand who you are. And I trust who you are. Wow, that's incredible, isn't it? Everybody else is kind of mingling around, kind of doing their thing. And this guy who's been totally rejected comes and humbles himself. And he worships Christ. Well, the question would be, what did Jesus do? So what's Jesus do? Let's go to verse 2. And I think what we're going to find here, let's just highlight this, it's an act of mercy. Jesus responds with an act of mercy. And Jesus stretched out his hand and he touched him. So to touch him, he had to get closer than 6 feet. Feels like today, doesn't it, a little bit, the social distancing thing? Jesus got close enough to touch him. You guys, people in the crowd must have been disgusted with what was happening. Jesus, don't you know who this is? Jesus, it's clear. Look at his face. Look at his hands. Look at his feet. Look at who he is. What are you doing? Not only is he ceremonially unclean, but Jesus, you're going to be ceremonially unclean. You just defiled yourself by touching this man. What are you doing? But he steps up and he stretches out his hand and he touches him. Now, does Jesus have to touch people to heal them? We see all sorts of situations in the scriptures where he heals without touching. He doesn't need to touch them. He doesn't need to see them. Sometimes he does it from a distance, from miles away. But here, for some reason, and I think you can get to feel why this leprous man, why he does this. He stretches out his hand and he touches him. And he says, I will be clean. Not just be healed, but be clean. And it says, and immediately the leprosy was cleansed. Now we don't know for sure if all the scars or all the deformities went away. If he was totally restored. We don't know that. All we know is this, that the leprosy was cleansed. There was no more disease. Does he carry the scars? Maybe. We don't know for sure. But the leprosy was gone. He may have been restored 100%. I don't know for sure. But the leprosy was gone. He was no longer unclean. He was no longer isolated or separated or disenfranchised. But he had been engaged by Christ, and he was touched and made clean. You guys, I think this story relates to us because we all feel that. We all feel and experience the uncleanness of our lives, of our hearts and minds. At the end of the day, we understand when we said we're sinners, sometimes that feels like people are trying to say, you're just a terrible, horrible human being. And guess what? That's not what it means to be a sinner. To be a sinner means that we've simply fallen short of the glory of God. And you guys, I don't know about you, but that's crystal clear in my life. I understand the uncleanness and the despair. We get that, right? And Jesus reaches out and he touches this man. And he says, man, I'd love to make you heal. I'd love to make you clean. Man, I'd love that. And he touches him. And the leprosy went away. Wow. It's an act of mercy. That's who God is. That's who Christ is. He's a merciful person. It's amazing. Now, let's go to verse 4. Okay, well, what is the result? What happens then? Right? And let's put a highlight on this. It's called the act of redemption. There's a redemptive thing that God does. And so Jesus says to him, see that you say nothing to anyone. Now, I don't know about you, but clearly this is where Jesus and I split company. If I'm the one healing, if I'm the one making him clean, I'm going to go, hey, go tell everybody, tell them where it came from. Tell them how it happened. Go tell everybody. Become an evangelist, right? I mean, you need to get out there and just tell everybody all about it. And Jesus says, hey, make sure you don't go tell anybody, okay? And you go, wait a second. What's that all about, Jesus? But he does say this. But he says, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a proof to them. Can you imagine what this felt like or looked like when he went to the priest? Now, what if he still had the scars? They might be a little hesitant. Like, whoa, what are you doing coming in here? Or maybe he was whole-bodied again. I don't know. But somehow he gets there and he says, I had leprosy. And I'm cleansed and I'm here to offer the gifts that Moses talked about in Leviticus 14. Okay, I'm here to do it. And I'm sure they go, whoa, tell us about, well, how'd this happen? And he goes, that guy Jesus down there, I went to him and I told him if he wanted to, he could make me clean because I knew he could, and he did. And I don't know about you, but if I'm a priest in the temple, I'm probably thinking, whoa, that's a little strange. That's a little different. This doesn't happen very often. Cure from leprosy doesn't happen very often, especially in those days. Today we have antibiotics that are pretty effective, but not totally effective. But then they didn't have those things. And he goes, and they're sort of like, whoa. And sure enough, they watch. And sure enough, he doesn't have leprosy anymore. And so I don't have time to go all the way through Leviticus 14, but you could go and read it, verses 1 through 32. And it is an incredibly complex set of things that needed to happen. There was a sacrifice of birds, one live, one would be sacrificed. It would be, the blood would be put on the live one, and the live one would be sent off flying. There was also a time for where they sacrificed lambs. There'd be other sacrifices in all of this in order to express the cleanness that is happening in this leper's life. And so he could be reunited with the community of Israel. It's an amazing thing. But here, look at this in Leviticus 14, verses 1 to 32. There are two places, one for people that had more means, up to verse 20, and others who were poor, what they could do to sacrifice and do what Moses had commanded them to do. But in both instances, whether you were rich or poor, it says, thus the priest shall make atonement before the Lord for him who is being cleansed. All this added up to expressing atonement. That's what Jesus did on the cross. Atonement is where things are made right, things are paid for that you can't pay for yourself. See, this leper couldn't pay all this for himself, and so there was this sacrificial system that expressed it all. Jesus does this in his own body, where he takes the sins of the world and puts it on himself. It's called propitiation. And what it is he says, I'm not just going to take your sin and excuse it. I'm going to take your sin and I'm going to put it on me. There's a big difference between those. You see, sin isn't just excused. It's paid for. It has to be paid for. And Jesus said, I'd like to pay for everyone. Over all of mankind, I'll pay for everyone's sin. I'll take it on myself and die for you. Wow. It's as if he's the judge. I don't know if you've ever gotten a traffic ticket. I had one once. That's a lie. I've had a bunch of them. And I've had to go to court a couple of times to do this. And eventually you come up in front of the judge and he says, did you do it? And you kind of go, well, you should have been there. If you'd have seen the situation, you'd excuse me too. And he goes, yeah. What, were you guilty? Well, okay, I was guilty, yeah. And he goes, okay, boom, pay for it. So there was one day, this young guy came up before the judge. It happened to be the judge's son. And the judge's son, judge says to him, because he's the judge, he's responsible to carry out the law, right? That's his responsibility. And he says to his son, are you guilty? And the son said, yeah. And he says, pay for it, 3 days in jail. Or $5,000. He goes, Dad, you know I don't have $5,000. He goes, great, 3 days in jail. But because this judge loves his son, he takes off his robe and he comes down in front and he says, I'll pay for it for you. Because he didn't want to do 3 days in jail, he paid $5,000. And he paid for his son. That's called atonement. He paid for it for him. That's what's happening here. The priests then do this series of sacrifices to make atonement so that this leper could be back in the community. Wow. It's called an act of redemption, right? So here's the deal. In this whole thing, Jesus spoke and behaved with absolute authority. And he astounded everybody around him. Jesus acts, not only does he speak with authority, but he acts with authority. Secondly, Jesus has all authority in heaven and on earth. That's what he says in Matthew 8:28, right? He has all the authority, and he always has from the beginning of time and before time even started. As the Son of God, he has had authority from eternity past to eternity future. But Jesus' authority was delegated to him by God the Father because the Father empowered the Son of Man through the line of David to be Messiah. And he gives him and delegates the authority in that line also. And last but not least, Jesus' authority is aimed at redeeming people who know they're broken. Jesus' authority is aimed at redeeming people who know they're broken. That's who he came for. He says, I didn't come for the healthy, I came for the sick. But here's the trick. We're all sick. We all have a disease. It's called the disease of sin. It's expressed in a million different ways. But we all have it. And this leprosy was an expression of the brokenness of this world and this man's life. So here's the deal. Let's talk about the touch of Christ in your life. There's an act of worship, there's an act of mercy, and there's an act of redemption. And you know what I'd like to do is I'd like to walk back up through the middle of this, and it says this. The act of redemption that God does in our lives is because there's an act of mercy. Right? He redeems us because he loves us. And there is mercifulness in who God is and what he does. And as a result, I think we can say there needs to be an act of worship. That we would worship him. And here's the deal. I don't know for sure, but I think this leper, when he left and he'd been redeemed, they could say to him, hey, go home. Go home. Go be with your family. Go be with your community. Go be with the people in your neighborhood. Go hang out. You've been cleansed. You've been made new. Behold, old things have passed away. New things have come. Go home. Give everybody a hug. Because God is faithful. God is faithful to you and to me. In the midst of our brokenness, he comes to cleanse. Because God is faithful. And that faithfulness is great. And so what we're going to do, the band, the trio, is going to come up. And you guys, we're going to sing a song called Great Is Your Faithfulness. And I think if there could be a fourth member, if we could make this a four-person band, I think the leper would come and he would sing this song. Great is your faithfulness. Because he is so faithful to you and to me. Because of his act of redemption, as a result of his act of mercy, then we get to have an act of worship. To say he is amazing. He is awesome in every way. And great is his faithfulness. Okay?
Let's say it together, please.
to thy great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Pardon for sin and the peace that endureth, thine own dear presence to cheer and to guide, strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. Blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, true mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me.
Strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. What an encouragement. Thank you for joining us today to worship at Quest, to sing. It is so good. It's music to my soul, literally. And it's great to join in community with each other and also with those who have come before, like this leper, in acts of worship in response to God's mercy and the redemption that he does, which is just wonderful. So, community, real quick. We, on your seats, have a bunch of different small groups. Make sure you take this, go put this on your refrigerator or on your bedside table, and read it every day and every night. It has a lot of opportunities for you to get connected with other people, with other believers, to encourage you to do life together through the ups and downs. And we have a bunch of options both online and in person, or a mix. So come talk to me or reach out to the leaders, or if you have any questions, we want to help you get connected with other people. And also lastly, if you're interested in baptism, in 2 weeks, we have a baptism service. So come talk to me or Kevin, and we would love to baptize you. All right, thank you for worshiping today. We are going to dismiss by half at a time, so half on my right. You guys are dismissed. Have a wonderful Sunday, and we will dismiss you guys in just a second.